All right, this is one of those moments where I come on here and I ask you for your help because I have this whole idea for a thing that I want to talk about, and it's really interesting, and it's going to make for this really nifty, tiny little and then likewise, and you're all going to be, what? It's so good, but I can't remember what movie it is. It's a motif. It's not just in one movie, but I just saw a movie. Hi, I'm Matt, by the way. This is a 10-minute Bible Hour podcast. This is your first time. Sometimes you just turn on the microphone and we start talking. I just saw a movie where how you die is really important. It's like a warrior honor code kind of movie. And maybe it was The Northman, the Robert Eggers film. He just did the remake of Nosferatu. He did The Vivitch or The Witch a while back. He did one called The Northman. It might have been The Northman. And whether it was or not, the idea in this scene is that there's a Viking or somebody from a warrior culture, and he's dead. He's mortally wounded. He's just not quite dead yet. And maybe an enemy comes along, and the guy's like, just give me my sword. Just give me my sword. I can't die without my weapon in my hand. And if I'm remembering the scene rightly, it's like the main character withholds the sword for a minute to get maybe information or something he needs from him. Then he gives him the sword, and the guy is like, oh, okay, there's honor in this. How I die matters. And likewise, see what I'm doing here? Likewise, I mean, thinking most cultures, how you die matters, and it's a pretty big deal. You only get to do it once. But in the case of the Bible, it seems like there's this idea that a very dishonorable death is the death of a lawbreaker. A very dishonorable death is the death of somebody who gets hung. I'm sorry, I know that's very morbid. The idea that a very dishonorable death is one where you are surrounded by bad people, by other lawbreakers, by wicked people. This would be a bad and ignoble death that in the cultures of the Bible, you would not want that. I mean, heck, after reading about this for a while and thinking about it, I can almost imagine a scene in Bible times or in this kind of culture where somebody would be surrounded by a bunch of other people who've done a lot of bad things, criminals, lawbreakers, transgressors, and this person who's maybe half decent, who's facing this fate, surrounded by all of these transgressors, might be like, just let me die over here, not surrounded by this crowd. And this idea of an honorable death, of how you die, dying with dignity, is one that comes up a lot surrounding the death of Jesus himself, both in the prophecies that point to Jesus and that the stuff that the New Testament says about the death of Jesus and the way it actually happened and how the rest of the New Testament sort of processes that through. So we're in the book of Galatians. We've been working through this. Can you hear that I'm still battling this cough? It is stinking 10 degrees below zero outside. I'm running a humidifier over here. I'm just shooting it into the microphone, into my face. It's got to be bad for a microphone, right? I've got some kind of organic, stupid, honey, gooey, what is this called? Honey's cough drop in right now. So it makes me sound all clicky, and I'm really sorry for that. Just from time to time, this is just how it is. I turn on this microphone to do this podcast, which is a daily podcast where you just get whatever's happening next and whatever's going on in my life. Like, it just might bleed over into the podcast. I turn on this microphone to do this thing, and it's like that one extra tiny little bit of pressure. And believe me, I do not feel much pressure in this conversation with you. I sense that we like each other. I sense that we've got some history together. I sense that those of you who are new, you're just going to jump right in. We're getting to know each other. It's going to be great. But apparently, somewhere deep in my subconscious, there's this awareness. It's like, hey, like, there are a lot of people here. Like, it's a lot. And if they were actually here in the room with you, you'd want to try and not sound stupid. And so maybe we should just tighten up those little alveoli in your lungs, just a teeny tiny little bit, just to show that you mean it and that you take it seriously. Oh, the air is dry? Then it's really cold outside? Well, then let's just have a little bit of hacking cough as we go along. So I'm doing that again. I'm so sorry. It sounds dumb and hacky, but y'all are so patient. I really do appreciate it. There's this moment in the book of Luke. Dang it, I should have looked it up. Boy, we're all over the place today, aren't we? We're having fun. Luke 22, we're right at the end of the Lord's Supper scene. The disciples are all upset because they know what's coming, and Peter has just said, I'm never going to deny you, and Jesus is like, yeah, you're gonna, a lot. And then finally, Jesus says this. This is verse 35. Then Jesus asked them, when I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack anything? Nothing, they answered. I'm sure they were like, what's going on? It seems like you're shifting gears. Verse 36, Jesus said to them, okay, but now if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. I'm like, oh, okay. Now, in the larger context, we figure out here that what Jesus is saying is that his death is going to be scandalous, and he is heading toward his death like right now, right as they walk out the door from establishing the Last Supper. He's going to get arrested, and he's going to be fast-tracked through a kangaroo court, and he's going to go right up on a cross, and he's going to be crucified more or less naked in front of everybody. It's going to be shameful. He's going to bear this hideous curse and the indignity of this horrible death. All of that's coming, like right now. It's a nice meal, though, guys. So it seems like what he's saying is, hey, you remember before when we were in the relatively safe harbors up north in our home stomping grounds of Galilee? Yeah, well, we're not there anymore, and things are about to get crazy. That seems to be what he's trying to communicate. But here's the kicker. Ready? This is the payoff for all the stuff I'm saying about Vikings and swords and an honorable death and a dishonorable death and Jesus' death, taking on the curse, being the curse. Here it is, verse 37. Jesus talking here. It is written, quote, and he was numbered with the transgressors. And I tell you that this must be fulfilled in me. Yes, what is written about me is reaching its fulfillment. And then there's this last little line, and it doesn't really pertain to what we're talking about, but I just love it, so I'm going to read it to you. Then the disciples said, see, Lord, here are 2 swords? That's enough, he replied. Okay, end of scene. Then they go off to the Garden of Gethsemane, and he gets arrested. And just like I was saying a minute ago, he's off to get killed in an insane, public, not dignified way, surrounded by the transgressors. He's going to have a criminal on either side of him on this cross. And then on top of that, an even worse criminal, the horrible murderer and insurrectionist, a guy who threatened to destabilize a very fragile peace barely held together between the occupying Romans and the very rowdy Jewish people of the time of Jesus here during the governorship of Pontius Pilate. That guy, Barabbas, is another one of the transgressors who were right there next to Jesus during this whole moment of madness in which Jesus is going to be executed. Now, Jesus' reference there is back to Isaiah 53 something. It's a couple of nods. It's like Isaiah 53:6. And then there's another turn of a phrase in verse 12, I think. So I'm just turning over there. We're going to find it. Here we go. Isaiah 53:6. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. And this is going to feel a little bit like Bible ping pong, but that verse in Isaiah 53:6 bounces us all the way back to 1 Peter chapter 2. And here Peter writes, to this you were called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. He committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. When they hurled their insults at him, he didn't retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. He himself bore our sins in his body on the tree, so that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. For you were like sheep going astray, but now you have returned to the shepherd and overseer of your souls. I mean, you can see the last couple sentences there are just right from Isaiah 53. I mean, Peter is explicitly saying, just like Paul is, that Jesus endured this curse, this hideous death on a tree, a death that is not honorable, a death that you would not want. Jesus was aware of it, saying that he was the fulfillment of this idea of being numbered among the transgressors. Paul was aware of it, even though he probably wasn't there at the crucifixion. And Peter couldn't have been more aware of the social implications of the unclean kind of death that Jesus died on the cross. But also, Jesus, Paul, Peter, and Isaiah, before any of this stuff even happened, are all completely dialed in on the reality that there's something about that accursed, dishonorable death, being numbered among the transgressors, enduring this indignity, this injustice, this oppression, this affliction. There's something about how screwed up it all is that is important to the story, that's important to what it means. that is key to that concept of him becoming sin for us. That 2 Corinthians 5:21 concept that we talked about. He who knew no sin became sin for us. That is central to that concept of the Galatians 3 thing that we've been reading again and again and again. Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it's written, cursed is everyone who is hung on a tree. This was a bad death that Christ endured, not just a painful one. Isaiah is speaking to that as well, and we're going to unpack the rest of this Isaiah passage tomorrow. We're a little tight on time here. But this is a bad death, a painful death, a dishonorable death, an ugly death, a death that tells a story and casts a pall over the person who has to go through it. I mean, heck, it's a naked death. It's an example death that the Romans tried to make as humiliating and awful as possible as a public deterrent to anyone else who might follow suit as an insurrectionist or a lawbreaker. And I feel like we're about halfway through the conversation we need to have with that, so we're just going to pause right here in the middle of our flashback to Isaiah 53 and go and look at the rest of that passage. Final thing on the way out the door, and this is an important one. I got a wedding invitation from Maggie and John, who got married about a month ago as I'm recording this, and you two just look delightfully happy. I hope that was a wonderful day. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I'm so grateful for the invitation. And I hope it's been a great first month of marriage. What a wonderful thing. All the blessings to you two. All the blessings in the world. All right. Picking it up tomorrow where we left off. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.